Good evening and welcome everyone to the first of 3 classes on hang gliding in the Himalayas. Now, one of the first things is not to be scared of heights.
John?
I'm sorry, that's next week's talk. This week's talk is my life in journalism and film. That's me some years ago at the Hillside Studios in Bushy with my best friend, my golden retriever, Sam. I knew I wanted to be a journalist at a very young age. And here's me in my very first car. I've loved open tops ever since. At the age of 17, I decided to go along and have a chat with the editor of the Watford Observer. And I said to him, "You've got nothing in your paper for young people. How about giving me a column every week that I could write for you?" I think he was a bit taken aback by my teenage audacity, and he sent me on my way. So instead, I placed an advert in a rival local newspaper, which was then the Evening Echo. And my advert said, "I want to launch a young people's magazine, and I'm looking for young, budding journalists, writers, photographers, and poets who could help me." Before I knew it, my front living room was full of about 30 young people who all wanted to help with this new magazine, and my mum was making coffee for everyone. So we launched a magazine initially called Youth in Action magazine, but we shortened that to YAM, which sounded a bit more cool. Our magazine was a great success in Hertfordshire. We interviewed Noel Edmonds when he was just starting out on BBC Radio 1. We had Berkhamsted Coffee Freaks. Also, this litterbug comic produced for us by Dave Gibbons, who went on to become a world-famous comic artist. So the launch of the YAM magazine also launched a number of careers, including mine, because after the Watford Observer editor saw my magazine, he didn't just give me a column, he gave me a page every week called Accent on Youth, with young people writing and doing photography and poetry. I had an exclusive interview with Simon D, who you may remember as the Graham Norton of his day. I even interviewed the Prime Minister, Edward Heath, and I had 2 questions which my dad helped me to prepare. Were you a rebel as a young man? And do you have any advice for the young people of today? And Edward Heath said yes to both questions. And he promised to send a message to the Watford Observer the next day. And I went to the editor and I said, "Have you heard anything from 10 Downing Street? I had a chat with Edward Heath yesterday." He didn't believe me. Just at that time, there was a knock at the door and the messenger boy came in and said, "We've just had this envelope from 10 Downing Street arrive by courier." So that was a very special moment indeed. So after my stint of doing this page for the Watford Observer, I decided that I would like to do show business articles, photographing and interviewing some of the top pop stars of the day. And my first professional photograph was of Elton John in the bath at Watford Football Club, and it was published all over the world. This was the time when Watford Football Club had baths instead of showers, and in the bath next to Elton John was Rod Stewart. I went on to do interviews and photographs with some of the top stars, such as Rod Stewart, these are my pictures and my words, 𝗟𝗵𝗄𝗎, some of you may remember him, and also Suzi Quatro, and even Donny Osmond. And it's true, he liked to wear green socks. But after doing this, I wanted to do more serious journalism. So I went to join a new magazine called New Internationalist, which was writing about the plight of the developing countries, and that appealed to me more than the show business articles. And it was through New Internationalist that I was appointed to be editor of a one-off international newspaper called Yes, But What Can I Do?, sponsored by the United Nations. And it involved going around the world, finding action groups who were doing things to help make the world a better place, such as against pollution, against hunger, against poverty. After I interviewed all these action groups, I was only about 21, so I was very lucky to get this job at the time. I thought I'd like to be part of an action group. So, with some friends, we launched Campaign Coffee to educate the British public about the plight of the coffee pickers who pick coffee for us. I flew to Tanzania to import 3 tons of their instant coffee. Campaign Coffee from Tanzania was a great success and actually the prelude to fair trade. After that, I decided to live in America as a freelance foreign correspondent doing writing and photography. Most people thought I was going to America to advance my career, but that wasn't the truth because there was a romantic element. I fell in love with an American girl I met on a train in London. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. You could say she's the one who got away. 𝗟𝗲𝗄𝗧. While in America, I lived in a little university town called DeLand. And the local paper did a big 1-page story about me, and also I did stories for the British newspapers. For example, I tracked down many of the astronauts who went to the moon. I phoned NASA and said, I'd like to interview the moon astronauts. They said, we're having a party next week, a reunion of all the moon astronauts. You can come along. But they gave me the wrong coordinates. And I arrived 1 day after the party. It wasn't my fault. I went back to NASA and said, look, you've let me down. I want you to arrange for me to go and visit these astronauts at their homes. I thought they'd kick me out with rocket fuel, but actually they said yes. The story eventually was published in the Daily Mail. Another strange thing that happened to me in America is that an inventor locked me up in a shed full of crocodiles. Arthur Jones invented the Nautilus exercise equipment. I asked to interview him and he said, meet me in the House of Pancakes, 10 o'clock. And he ordered his French fries and sunny side up egg. And then he said, follow me. And he got in his Cadillac, I got in my little Datsun honeybee and followed him to the factory. And we got to this big shed. It was very theatrical. He jabbed me in the chest and he said, don't write anything that's inside this shed in America. And I said, well, I'm writing for the British press. He said, all right, in you go, boy. And then he closed the door and locked it. And in there, he kept crocodiles as pets. Can you believe it? And I took a load of pictures of these crocodiles. But later on, when I wasn't looking, he ripped the film out of my camera. So you'll have to take my word for it. And I'm here to tell the tale. After I got back, after just over a year of living in the United States, I went to do investigative medical reporting on the Daily Mirror, mostly, and my friend, fellow journalist Martin Bailey, helped on some of these stories. My medical investigations won a medical journalism award, and I'm going to show you just a brief extract of my programme on London weekend television.
Every year, hundreds of seriously handicapped babies are born in London. There are tests for abnormality in pregnancy, but many hospitals are denying them to the women who've asked for them. Why aren't mothers being allowed to find out if they're carrying a heartbreak baby? Medical journalist Jon Danzig has been looking into what happens nationally. He's found evidence that thousands of mothers who ought to have the tests aren't getting them.
The last survey that was done on this in the nation was in 1978 when the Clinical Genetics Society carried out a survey, an extensive survey, which showed that only 1/10 of pregnant women at risk were actually being offered the amniocentesis test.
Following my award, I was invited to join Roger Cook's Checkpoint programme on Radio 4. Here's just an extract from one of the investigations I did.
I've come to see Mr. Graham Tall. Jon Danzig from the BBC. Mr. Tall, I've come to interview you now for the Checkpoint programme about the letters you've sent for your client. Come on, you can do better than this and walk away. What have you got to say to all the people who have invested almost £100,000 because of your letter, which has induced them to invest this money? Have you got nothing to say?
It was up the stairs and in and out of offices while Mr. Tall continued to offer no answers at all. Eventually, he beckoned a colleague to join him.
I'd like you to leave the premises, please, now. I know my rights in this matter, I'm sure you do. If I ask you to leave, then you should leave. And I'm asking you to leave,
are you?
Please. I'm Mr. Atkinson, one of the partners.
And were you aware of the letters which had been sent out?
I'm making no comment whatsoever. Would you please leave?
Is that all you can come up with? Look, come on, don't push me. There's no need to push. Why won't you say anything, Mr. Tall?
I've told you that I'm not prepared to comment. Now, I would like to go and see a client now, out of the office.
And off he went, leaving Miss Minto, Mr. 𝗃cie, Mr. Webb and others still waiting for an explanation, and still very worried indeed.
That report from Jon Danzig.
One bit that was cut out of the programme was when I was following this errant solicitor and he said, "Don't stick that microphone up my nose." So I said, "Well, where would you like me to stick it?" When I was at BBC Radio, I bought one of the first VHS video cameras. I was really excited about this new technology. And with my friend, Steve Skinner, we decided to make a little film with this new video camera, and we called it The Man with a Mountain on His Head. And at the time, the Watford Film Club advertised a competition for the best short film. And I said, "Well, I'd like to enter my video." And they said, "No, we only accept cine film." I managed to change their mind, and my video was the first time they'd ever had a video entry. I'm just going to show you a short extract. It won first prize. And so buoyed was I that I decided to launch my own video production company in Watford called Look Here. One of the first commissions was to make a documentary on how paper is made by the local John Dickinson group.
I don't know how paper's made. Paper's made of a sheen what's that big. 5 years old.
The paper-making machine is enormous, the length of 20 buses.
These were the early days of my film production business in Watford, and I was advised, you really need to have a good phone number. So I got 01923232323. This is gonna make my business, my phone isn't gonna stop ringing. And it's true, it didn't stop ringing, but none of the calls were for me. It was for the leisure centre, the taxi firm, the car repair shop. I thought, I might as well go along with these people. Someone rang up and said, "Yeah, can you have a look at my Range Rover?" I said, "Yep, I can." He said, "And if there's something wrong with it, can you fix it?" I said, "No, all I can do is look at it." And then someone else rang up. He said, "Can you take me from Watford Junction to Heathrow Airport?" I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because I don't feel like it." And then there was this very posh woman who rang me early one morning. She said, "Good morning." I said, "Good morning." She said, "Can I book a badminton court, please?" I said, "No, you can't." She said, "Why not?" I said, "Because you've been naughty. You've been very naughty and you can't have one." But the thing is, none of these people rang again. So it had its desired effect. But I couldn't spend my life answering phone calls that weren't for me. So I did this spoof phone message as a revenge for companies that subjected me and my small team of staff to music and messages on hold. I'm going to play you a short extract.
Please indicate the type of music you would like to listen to whilst you are waiting. Press 1 for classical, 2 for pop, 3 for contemporary. Sorry, we have no music left. The cleaner walked off with the CD last night.
This number became so popular that hundreds and hundreds of people just rang it to hear the funny message. And LBC Radio decided to run this as a news story.
You're listening to 97.3 FM.
A Watford firm has come up with a way of getting its own back on businesses, keeping customers on hold with irritating answer services. Jon Danzig from TV production company Look Here says countless working hours are lost while staff are kept on hold by other firms. He wants to give the offenders a taste of their own medicine.
Hold on, an operator is becoming available. Oh, sorry, we just missed her. Hopefully, one will be coming back soon. She has gone for a smoke in the backyard. So difficult to get good human staff these days.
Now, if you want to hear the whole message, you can, because I've still got this number. But my biggest success at winning new business was a production I made called A 5-Minute Video on Why Your Company Needs a 5-Minute Video.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. But a moving picture with sound must be worth a lot more. The powerful and exciting medium of video is all about moving pictures.
Next, I was back in the States as creative consultant for a full-scale replica of the Golden Hind, and even appeared on US television as Sir Francis Drake.
Sir Francis Drake, welcome.
Very pleased to meet you.
We're so glad that you could come.
In actual fact, it's Captain General Sir Francis Drake.
Captain General,
That's
and
right.
What a lovely accent you have, my dear.
Well, I thought you were the one with the accent, if you don't mind me saying.
We colonists, we don't know.
When I got back to the UK, I did some big productions, including how unemployed people could become self-employed, shown in job centres throughout Great Britain.
Employed.
Employed.
Unemployed. Sort of.
Unemployed.
There's an alternative to employment or unemployment. It's self-employment. Giving yourself a job. Making a job for yourself and maybe others too. Creating enterprise and a business you can call your own.
Also a series of videos called People Power, presented by John Humphreys, Sue Lawley and Brian Redhead.
What's the single biggest contribution to business success?
That's the question we put to businesses throughout the world.
A very special member of my team was my dog, Sam. Not only was he the office paper shredder, but he was also the office calculator, as he demonstrated live on BBC Radio.
Welcome, Jon Danzig and his dog, Sam, from Watford. Sam is absolutely gorgeous. He's a golden retriever. Tell us what it is that you do.
Well, I've just produced a program called People Power, very much to promote the idea that we should always be learning if we want to keep earning. People kept saying to me, oh, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks and there's no hope for older people. So I thought, well, I'll try and prove them wrong. And my dog, who's 8 years old, I thought perhaps we'll teach him a few new tricks.
So what tricks have you taught him?
Well, come on, Sam. Sam, what's 1 and 1? Good boy.
Yeah, 2.
What's 2 and 2? Good boy. Good boy, Sam. Have a dog treat.
Then something went wrong. I was very exhausted. My face changed. My younger sister Sue, who hadn't seen me for a few years, confided in my dad that it looked like I'd been in a fight. My friend Paul, who I also hadn't seen for a while, was shocked when I opened the front door to him and he blurted, "Crikey, you've rearranged your face." I lost the girl I was going to marry, 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗆. She didn't know I was ill, nor did I, nor did any doctor. In the end, I diagnosed myself. The condition I had is called acromegaly, a non-cancerous tumour of the pituitary at the base of the brain, causing massive excess growth hormone. I sought out the world's best neurosurgeon for this condition in Germany, and he did 2 operations on me. Unfortunately, he didn't fix me. So I spent the next few years in the doldrums. I couldn't work, and I had to try and fight very hard with doctors to get the medicine I needed, which was refused to me. Eventually, I did get the medicine I needed and have made a pretty good recovery. And in my recovery, I've been trying hard to catch up on lost time. I took on the Daily Mail for lying about Romanians and Bulgarians, and won a landmark case when I reported them to the Press Complaints Commission. I've also produced hundreds of videos for my YouTube channel, 𝗟𝗄𝗋𝗆.com, and hundreds of articles for my blog, eu-rope.com, and I've also given some speeches, for instance, in Germany. I'm a journalist who's been investigating journalism. In particular, how the British newspapers have presented immigrants and refugees, and how our press regulator has intervened or not when things have gone wrong, when newspapers have not accurately reported what's been happening. And I haven't liked what I've seen. A daily deluge in some of our media that's spreading hatred towards migrants and refugees. And also during this period, I've had some strange ordeals. 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, that was the payday loan company, said I owed them thousands of pounds. So I rang them to complain, but they weren't happy when I told them that I was recording the call.
Thank you so much for calling for our department. My name is June. These calls are recorded for quality assurance. And am I speaking to Jonathan Danzig?
Yes, I'm recording the call as well.
No, I don't give you permission to record me, sir.
Well, I don't give you permission to record me then.
I did eventually win, and 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 went out of business. Another company I was very angry with was Microsoft, but I can't remember why. I decided I'd pay them a lesson by phoning them and pretending to be German. Now, I can't speak German. What happened? Good afternoon, Microsoft. How can I help you? Ich bin für Leute verstanden, Sie gehen Huden haben. I'm sorry, sir. I don't speak German. Was verstehen Sie nicht? I'm going to find a German speaker for you, okay? Hold the line, hold the line. Was verdienen? Sir, we haven't got a German speaker in this office, but there's one in another block. We'll have to go and get him. Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. 20 minutes later, a German speaker came to the phone, and he said, "Guten Abend, was möchten Sie?" And I said, "Good afternoon." Do you speak English? Obviously, Microsoft were not ready for a spoof phone call from a nutcase in England. But when I get spoof phone calls, I'm ready for them.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Very good morning, sir. This is Sandra. I'm calling you from Technical Department of BT Openreach about your internet, your broadband connection.
Yes, thank you for calling. I just have two questions for you.
Uh-huh.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Right?
That's a very suspicious answer. One more question. What are the 39 steps? Thank you.
Well, the thing is that with the telephone, you can never really know when it... Oh, hold on a second. Hello? Ah, Caroline, thank you so much for ringing me back. Well, I think you know that I love your breasts and your thighs. Hold on a minute. It's Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm having a party later and need to organise a takeaway. Caroline, I'm in a big meeting. I'll call you back. Okay, thank you. Well, if you have been, thank you for listening.